The air at Fort Holloway was thick. It was a wet, heavy blanket of North Carolina humidity that stuck your shirt to your back before the sun even crested the pine trees. To Specialist Maya Reed, it felt like she was breathing water. She stood straight, her duffel bag at her feet, outside the squat, beige building that served as the headquarters for Alpha Company. She was new. She was an outsider, and she was, to the men gathering for the morning formation, a curiosity. Maya was not a fresh-faced recruit. She was 32 years old, with a stillness in her dark eyes that spoke of a life already lived. She had been a sheriff's deputy in a small, dusty Colorado town for 8 years before she enlisted. She had come to the Army late, but she had come with a purpose. She was a born marksman. Her father, a quiet man who smelled of gun oil and coffee, had taught her to shoot before she could properly read. "Breathe, hold, squeeze," he would whisper. "Respect the tool, Maya. Respect the target." She had excelled in basic and AIT. At the sniper course at Fort Benning, she had broken records. She could calculate windage and drop in her head. She could lie still for 12 hours, becoming just another rock, another shadow. But the papers in her file didn't matter here. Here, she was just a woman, and she was in Sergeant Doyle's squad. Sergeant First Class Frank Doyle was a man carved from granite and old grudges. He had served 20 years, and in his mind, the Army was a brotherhood. Sisters, daughters, and wives had their place, but it was not here, not in his squad, and certainly not in a sniper's nest. He walked out of the orderly room, his jaw set, a clipboard in his hand. He didn't call for attention. He didn't have to. The soldiers, leaning against the barracks wall, sipping coffee, went quiet and straightened up. His eyes swept over them, and then they landed on Maya. He walked right up to her, stopping so close she could smell the sour coffee on his breath. He was a big man, and he used his size to intimidate. "Specialist Reed," he said, his voice a low gravel. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't say welcome. "Sergeant," she replied. Her voice was steady, clear. Doyle looked her up and down. It was a long, slow appraisal designed to make her feel small. "I read your file, Reed. Exceptional marks, top of your class." He spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the dusty ground just inches from her boots. "I'm not impressed. This isn't a classroom. This isn't a shooting range where the targets are paper. This is my squad. We do real work. We don't have time to babysit." A few of the men behind him snickered. Maya's face remained impassive. She had heard variations of this speech before, in the academy, in her first patrol car. It was the same old song, just a different singer. "I'm not here to be babysat, Sergeant. I'm here to work." "We'll see about that," Doyle grunted. "Your locker is at the end of the bay. Your bunk is the one no one else wanted, by the latrine. We're running a field exercise at 1300. Don't be late, and read." "Sergeant, try to keep up." He turned and walked away, the other soldiers following him like shadows, leaving Maya alone with her duffel bag and the thick, suffocating air. She took a slow breath, held it, and let it out. The insult was a familiar sting. She closed her eyes for just a moment, picturing a target, a perfect bull's. Breathe, hold, squeeze. She was not here to make friends. She was here to do her job. The barracks base smelled of old boots, sweat, and floor wax. As she'd been told, her bunk was the last one, pushed up against the concrete block wall of the noisy, humming latrine. The other men, most of them barely out of their teens, were laughing and roughhousing, their voices echoing in the big room. They gave her a wide berth as if she were a different species. She unpacked with methodical precision. Her uniforms were folded in perfect squares. Her gear was clean, oiled, and stowed. She assembled her rifle, the M24, with the practiced, gentle motions of a surgeon. This was her partner. This was the only voice she needed to listen to. At 1300, she was outside, in full kit, her rifle cased and strapped to her pack. The sun was a hammer. Doyle's squad, first squad, was gathered around a Humvee. Doyle was pointing at a large map spread across the hood. "All right, listen up," he was saying. "Intel says there's been some strange activity over by the reservoir, Sector 4. He tapped the map. "Probably just some local rednecks poaching on government land, but Command wants us to sweep the area. It's a simple recon. We go in, we look around, we come back. Ramirez, you're on point. Corporal Hicks, you're on the radio." He looked up and saw Maya, his lip curled in a small sneer. "Ah, Reed, glad you could make it. We've got a very special job for you." He pointed not to the map, but to a small, rickety-looking watchtower about a half-mile away, overlooking the edge of the training area. "You see that tower? That's you. You're going to climb up there and be our overwatch. You can watch over us." The men chuckled again. It was a blatant insult. The tower was useless. It was too far from the objective. It had no good line of sight to the reservoir, which was blocked by a dense stand of cypress trees. It was a menial, pointless task designed to keep her out of the way. It was babysitting. Maya looked at the tower. She looked at Doyle. She felt the eyes of the entire squad on her. They were waiting for her to argue, waiting for her to get emotional, waiting for her to prove she was just a hysterical female, as Doyle had no doubt called her in private. She simply nodded, "Yes, Sergeant." Doyle looked almost disappointed. He wanted a fight. He wanted her to break. "Fine, get to it and try not to fall asleep." The squad moved out, their laughter and low chatter fading as they entered the tree line. Maya adjusted the straps of her pack, the weight heavy on her shoulders, and began the long, hot walk to the tower. The tower was old, wooden, and smelled of mildew and bird droppings. The steps creaked under her weight. At the top, a small platform was enclosed by a rusty metal railing. The view was, as she predicted, terrible. She could see the tops of the pines, a sliver of brown road, and the shimmering heat rising from the base in the distance. The reservoir was completely hidden. She was being punished for being good at her job. She was being mocked for being a woman. A cold, hard knot formed in her stomach, but she was a soldier. She had her orders, so she did her job. She unzipped her rifle case and assembled her weapon. She lay down on the hot wooden planks, facing the direction the squad had gone. She put her eye to the scope. She would watch. Even if she was watching nothing, she would watch. For 3 hours, she lay perfectly still. The sun beat down on her back, sweat trickled into her eyes, and she did not wipe it. She became part of the tower. She watched the birds. She watched the heat. She watched the way the wind moved through the tops of the trees. And that's when she saw it. It was not a man. It was not a vehicle. It was a wrongness. Deep in the woods, far past where the tower's view should have ended, through a tiny gap in the canopy, she saw a flicker. It was a brief metallic glint, a reflection. It was there for 1 second, and then it was gone. A hunter's scope, a poacher's binoculars, maybe. But it was in the wrong place. It was too deep, and it was too professional. It wasn't the clumsy flash of a civilian. It was the quick, controlled glint of someone who knew how to move. She focused, adjusting her scope, her fingers working the knobs with expert speed. She scanned the area tree by tree, shadow by shadow. Nothing. It was gone. She reached for her radio. She hesitated. Doyle would laugh. "Seeing ghosts, Reed," she could hear him say. He would tell the whole squad, and it would become a new joke. "Don't fall asleep, Reed, or you'll see a boogeyman." She lowered her hand. She would not give him the satisfaction, but she took out her logbook. She noted the time, 15:42. She noted the approximate grid coordinates. She drew a small sketch of the area. She titled the entry, "Unidentified Glint, Sector 4, Probable Observation." An hour later, Doyle's squad returned. They were hot, sweaty, and empty-handed. "See anything up there, Your Highness?" Doyle called up to her, wiping his face with a rag. Maya packed her gear. She descended the ladder, her face a mask of professional calm. "Negative, Sergeant, nothing but trees." "Shocker," Doyle muttered to Hicks, who laughed. "All right, squad, hump it back to the motor pool. Beer call in 1 hour, except for Reed." He looked at her, a mean little smile on his face. "Your rifle needs cleaning, and so do all of ours. The armory is waiting. Don't want our top shot to get her hands dirty with real work, but you look like you're good at cleaning." Maya looked at the 8 rifles he was gesturing at. It was a 4-hour job, at least. It was unjust. It was demeaning. "Yes, Sergeant," she said. As she walked to the armory, carrying a heavy load of weapons that were not her own, she felt the burn of injustice. But beneath it, a colder feeling was setting in. The flicker she had seen. The wrongness in the woods. Doyle could mock her. The squad could ignore her. But she was a soldier, and she had seen something. And whatever it was still out there, hidden in the pines, near the dark, quiet waters of the reservoir. The next 2 weeks at Fort Holloway settled into a grinding, humiliating routine for Maya Reed. She was a soldier without a squad. While Doyle took the men out on patrols, qualifying them on new equipment or running live-fire drills, Maya was given the trash details. She was assigned to inventory, spending days in a dusty, windowless warehouse counting boots and bandages. She was put on gate guard, checking IDs in the blistering sun. A job for new privates, not a specialist with her skill set. The mockery was constant, but it was low-level. It was designed to wear her down. The men in her bay, taking their cue from Doyle, would accidentally knock over her footlocker or forget to wake her for early morning physical training, forcing her to sprint across the base to avoid being marked late. Her coffee mug, the one her father had given her, disappeared from the mess hall table and was later found in a trash can. Through it all, Maya remained a stone wall. She did not complain. She did not cry. She did not yell. She simply did the work. She counted every bandage. She checked every ID with polite precision. She cleaned her rifle and theirs. She ran her own miles after her shifts, pushing herself to exhaustion in the dark. And every night in her bunk, while the sounds of the latrine hummed through the wall, she wrote in her logbook. She documented every slight, every menial task, every insult. Not with emotion, but with facts. 1400, assigned to burn pit detail despite first squad being on weapons range duty. 1900, C. Hicks and PFC. Ramirez borrowed my cleaning kit without asking. But more importantly, she documented her observations. Twice more, from different vantage points on the base, she had seen things, not the glint, but the absence of things. She saw a flock of birds that suddenly took flight from a patch of trees for no reason. She saw a deer running at a full sprint, not from a predator, but from the edge of the reservoir. The animals were spooked. Something was disturbing the natural order. And the whispers on the base were growing. It wasn't just poachers anymore. A perimeter sensor had been tripped on the far side of the base, near the water treatment plant. But when the patrol arrived, there was nothing. The camera footage, when they played it back, was just static. A clean, 15-second burst of white noise right at the time of the breach. Spooked a gator, Doyle had explained at the morning brief, dismissing it. They mess with the electronics. Maya, standing at the back of the room as required, didn't believe it. Gators didn't trip sensors and emit electronic jamming fields. That afternoon, she found an ally, or at least a neutral party. Corporal Ben Carter was the squad's comms specialist. He was a quiet, skinny kid from Ohio who was more comfortable with circuit boards than with people. He didn't participate in the mockery. He just kept his head down and did his job. Maya found him in the comms shop, soldering a motherboard. "Corporal Carter," she said, standing in the doorway. He flinched, startled. "Oh, Specialist Reed, hey, can I help you?" "I wanted to ask you about the sensor failure, the one by the reservoir." Carter's eyes darted around as if Doyle might be hiding in a cabinet. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Sergeant Doyle said it was just wildlife." "I know what he said," Maya said softly, stepping inside. "But the camera feed, it wasn't a malfunction, it was static, jamming." Carter stopped soldering. He looked at her, his eyes wide. "You got that just from the rumor." "I've seen jamming before. Back in Colorado, we had a crew running an illegal grow-op. They used a cheap GPS jammer. It looked just like that on our dash cams." Carter pushed his glasses up his nose. "It wasn't a cheap jammer. Whatever hit that camera, it was military grade, a clean frequency hopping burst. It wasn't a Gator specialist. But if I tell Sergeant Doyle that, well, you know. He'll put you on gate guard with me," Maya said, a flicker of a smile touching her lips. Carter gave a weak laugh. "Yeah, something like that." "Thank you, Corporal. You confirmed something for me." "Confirmed what?" he asked, but she was already gone. That night, the first real shot was fired. It was not on the base. It was in the small town of Holloway Springs, just outside the main gate. A local police car on a routine patrol near the reservoir's public access boat ramp was hit. The bullet, fired from an impossible distance, went through the engine block. Not the tires, not the windshield. The engine block. It was a disabling shot. A shot designed to strand the vehicle, not to hurt the officer. The base was instantly locked down. The next morning, the tension in the briefing room was thick enough to cut. The base commander, Colonel Peters, was there. He was a tall, severe-looking man who did not suffer fools. "We have a situation," Peters said, his voice like ice. "The local PD was fired upon last night. The bullet was not a .3006. It wasn't a 7.62. Forensics just sent this over." He held up a clear plastic bag. Inside was a massive, deformed piece of metal. "This, gentlemen, is a .408 Che TAC, a specialized, long-range anti-materiel round. This is not a poacher's rifle. This is not a hunter. This is a professional, a highly skilled professional, and they are operating in our backyard." The room was silent. "This is now a base security operation. We have an unknown hostile element in the area of operations. Sergeant Doyle, your squad knows the terrain around the reservoir better than anyone. You are running this." Doyle, who looked pale, stood up. "Yes, sir. I want a full-scale reconnaissance. I want to know who this is, and I want to know what they want. You find them. You fix them. You do not engage unless fired upon. This is a recon, clear." "Clear, sir," Doyle said. "Good, gear up. You move out in 30. The squad scrambled. As Maya moved to grab her pack, Doyle's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. His grip was like steel. "Not you," he hissed, his face close to hers. "Sir, this is my specialty, long range." "I don't care what your specialty is," he cut her off, his voice low and full of venom. "This is a real operation, Reed, not a game. I can't be worried about you tripping and breaking a nail. I need men I can trust. You're a distraction." "A distraction?" "You heard me, you are benched. You will be in the TOC. You will run comms." "Corporal Carter is the comms." "Carter is coming with me. He's my comms in the field. You are the radio jockey. You sit at the desk. You listen. You do not talk. You do not act. You do not think. You just write down what we say. Is that simple enough for you?" The injustice of it was a physical blow. He was taking a comms tech into a potential firefight and leaving a trained sniper, the only other sniper in the company, to answer the phone. It was not a tactical decision. It was spite. It was personal. She wanted to scream. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to quote every regulation in the book that he was breaking. But she saw the look in his eyes. He was scared. The .408 Che tac. He was in over his head, and he was taking it out on her. She took a slow, deep breath. She unclipped her rifle case from her pack. She set it down. "Your orders are perfectly clear, Sergeant," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "Good," he spat. "Now get to the TOC and stay out of my way." She watched them leave, the entire squad geared up for war walking past her. Hicks gave her a pitying, smug look. Ramirez wouldn't meet her eyes. Only Carter, the last one in line, looked back. He had a look of pure terror on his face. He knew he didn't belong out there, and he knew she did. Maya walked to the Tactical Operations Center, the base's nerve center. It was a dark, air-conditioned room full of maps and computer screens. The duty officer, a board captain, pointed her to a console. "You're on for first squad. Their call sign is Hunter. You are baseplate. Just keep the log updated." For the next 4 hours, Maya sat in the cold, dark room, a headset over her ears. She listened to the squad's quiet movements. It was just a lot of Hunter 1. This is Hunter lead status. Solid lead. Click, hiss, static. She stared at the large, digital map on the wall. It showed the squad's position, a tight green cluster of dots, moving slowly along the swampy southern edge of the Cypress Lake Reservoir. She saw the dot for Carter, lagging just behind the main group. Her mind went back to the glint, the spooked animals, the .408. This was not one person, this was a team, and they were good. She felt a prickle of unease. Doyle was moving his squad in a predictable pattern, following the shoreline. It was what they were trained to do, but if she were the enemy, if she were the one with the .408, she wouldn't be on the shore, she'd be somewhere else. She pulled up her own logbook, the one she kept in her pocket. She looked at her notes. The glint, the coordinates, the deer, the birds, it all pointed to the water, not the woods. A new voice, not Doyle's, came over the radio. It was the colonel. "Baseplate, patch me through to Hunter lead." Maya pressed a button. "Hunter lead, this is Baseplate. Colonel is on the line for you." "Go ahead, Colonel," Doyle's voice crackled. "Doyle," the colonel said, "what's your status? We're getting an intermittent signal from a drone in your area, but the feed is choppy. We're seeing anomalous heat signatures in the water." "Negative, sir," Doyle said. "The water is clear. It's just water we have eyes on. The phantoms must be deep in the woods. We're moving to sweep the forest now." "Hold your position, Sergeant," the colonel ordered. "I don't like this." "Sir, with respect, my men are ready. We can handle this. We're going in." "Doyle, I..." The radio suddenly erupted in a high-pitched squeal, the jamming. It lasted only a second, but when the channel cleared, the air was filled with a new sound: gunfire. A single, deep boom that was the .408. Then a volley of suppressed, automatic fire. "Contact, contact," a new voice screamed into the radio. It was Ramirez. "We're taking fire from everywhere." "Hunter lead, talk to me," Maya yelled into the mic. "Doyle, report." Doyle's voice came back, tight with panic. "We're pinned down behind the berm. Hicks is hit. Hicks is down." "Where is the fire coming from, Sergeant?" Maya demanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "Where are they?" The response came not from Doyle, but from Ramirez, his voice cracking with terror. "I don't know, we can't see them. They're in the trees, they're everywhere. Who's shooting? We have no eyes on." The Tactical Operations Center, the TOC, had been a calm, cold place. Now it was a pressure cooker. The screams of First Squad shattered the air-conditioned silence. Officers and NCOs scrambled, running to other consoles, trying to get a drone feed, trying to get anything. "Who's shooting? We have no eyes on." Ramirez's cry was a loop of terror. Maya Reed's blood ran cold. She was not a radio operator, she was a sniper. And a sniper understands one thing above all: position. She looked at the map on the wall. The green dots of First Squad were clustered together, not moving. They were pinned behind a small, sandy berm on the bank of the reservoir. The map showed the terrain. To their back was the wide-open expanse of Cypress Lake. To their front was a dense, dark wall of forest. "They're in the trees," Doyle was yelling. "All units fire on the tree line, Sector 290." The sound of First Squad's M4s, frantic and uncontrolled, crackled over the radio. They were firing blind. "Negative, Sergeant." Maya's voice cut in, sharp and commanding. She wasn't asking, she was telling. "Cease fire, you are wasting ammunition and giving away your exact positions." "Reed, you shut your mouth," Doyle roared back, his breath heavy. "I'm under fire, Hicks is bleeding out." "And you will all be dead in 5 minutes if you keep shooting at the wrong target," Maya shot back. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up the map archive. She brought up her own logbook from her thigh pocket, flipping to the page with the coordinates. She cross-referenced her notes. The glint she saw from the tower, the spooked animals, the jammer, the drones, anomalous heat signatures. They were all on the water. "Colonel Peters," Maya yelled, not waiting for permission to address him. "Sergeant Doyle is wrong. The enemy is not in the woods." "What are you talking about, Specialist?" the colonel demanded, striding over to her console. "Sir, First Squad is firing at the trees. That's a classic L ambush. The enemy wants them to focus on the woods, but the kill zone is the water. They are being fired on from their flank, from the reservoir." "The reservoir?" the colonel said, skeptical. "It's a flat, open lake, Specialist. A man would be a sitting duck." "Not if he wasn't a man," Maya said, thinking aloud. "Not if he was a log or a patch of lily pads or just water." A new sound came over the radio. A whiz-snap. A bullet passing close to the microphone. This was followed by a sickening, wet thud. Carter's hit," Doyle screamed. "Medic, oh God, he's gone, Reed, you did this, you distracted me." Maya's heart stopped. Carter, the quiet comms kid, he was dead because Doyle was a fool, because he was arrogant, because he had taken the wrong person. A white-hot rage, cold and pure, filled Maya, but it was not a rage that made her shake. It was a rage that made her focus. It was the rage she used in the high school shooting championships. The rage she used when she passed the sniper course. It was a tool. "Baseplate to all QRF units," she said, her voice now a monotone, a machine. "Quick reaction force, stand by. Do not approach the reservoir from the south road. You will be walking into the same kill box. Approach from the east using the old logging road. Stay in the trees." "Who the hell is giving those orders?" the colonel snapped. "A soldier, sir," Maya said, not looking at him. She was focused on the map. She was in the kill zone with them. "Hunter Lead," she said into the mic. "Sir G.E. Ant Doyle, listen to me. You are going to die if you do not listen to me right now." There was only the sound of gunfire. "Doyle, do you want to save your men?" A pause, then a broken voice. What do you want, Reed?" "Where was the shot that hit Carter? Where did it come from?" I don't know, the water. It came from the water. It's impossible." "It's not impossible," Maya said. She was standing up now, grabbing her headset cord. "They are in the water. They are in waterproof ghillie suits. They are using the surface of the lake for concealment. They have been there for hours. They are cold. They are patient. And they are slaughtering you." The entire TOC was silent, listening to her. "Sir," Maya said to Colonel Peters, "Doyle is compromised. He has lost 2 men and his nerve. You need to relieve him." "Specialist, you are way over your line," the captain at the next console whispered. "Get me eyes on that lake," Maya said to the drone operator. "Ignore the trees, scan the water, look for anything, a ripple, a shadow that's too dark, a log that is breathing." The operator, a young private, nodded, his fingers flying. I'm trying, Specialist. The feed is still choppy, the jammers." "Find a window," Maya ordered. "Hunter Lead," she said, back on the radio. "I need you to do exactly as I say. You are going to provide covering fire, but not at the trees. You are going to fire into the water, 100 meters out. A V pattern. Start at 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Work your way in, just suppression. Keep their heads down." "Fire at the water," Doyle sounded insane. That's madness." It's madness to sit there and die, Maya yelled. Do it, Sergeant, that is an order. There was a moment of shocked silence. A specialist had just given a sergeant first class a direct order. Then Ramirez's voice. Sergeant, she's right, look at the old cypress stump. I thought it was a log, it's moving. Fire, Doyle screamed. Fire at the water. The sound of M4 fire exploded again, but this time it was directed. It was focused. Specialist, the drone operator shouted. I got something, a clean feed, just for a second. The main screen in the TOC flickered. The image was grainy from 5,000 feet. It showed the shoreline, the huddle of green dots that was first squad. And then, the lake. It was not empty. Dozens of anomalous heat signatures were there. They looked like patches of warm water, but they were shaped like men. They were submerged with only their heads or rifles breaking the surface, camouflaged as debris. My God, Colonel Peters whispered, they're an army. And then right in the middle of the lake, a quarter-mile out, the drone focused on a single, larger heat signature. It was a man standing on a submerged platform, and he was holding something long and heavy, the .408. There, Maya whispered, pointing at the screen. That's the command and control, that's the main sniper. The feed died, replaced by static. The jammers were back. Hunter lead, Maya said, her voice like ice. The enemy is confirmed in the water, multiple targets, you are cut off. QRF is 10 minutes out, you have to hold. We can't, Doyle yelled. They're advancing, they're coming out of the water. Maya looked at the colonel, her eyes were burning. Sir, I have to go. You will stay at that console, specialist. No, sir, Maya said, ripping the headset off and throwing it on the desk. I am a sniper, not a secretary. My squad is dying. The men who mocked me are dying, and I am the only person on this base who can stop it. You are breaking protocol, Reed. You are abandoning your post. I will have you court-martialed, the colonel roared. Maya was already at the door. She stopped and looked back, her hand on the handle. Hicks is hit, Carter is dead. You sent a comms tech on a sniper's mission, and you benched me. You, sir, and Sergeant Doyle, you did this. You can court-martial me when I'm done. She slammed the door open and ran. She was not heading for a Humvee. She was not heading for the QRF. She was heading for the armory. She had a 10-minute run. The QRF had a 10-minute drive. She was going to get her rifle, and she was going to end this. She sprinted across the base, her boots pounding the pavement. She ignored the shouts of "Hey!" from other soldiers. She was a woman on fire, the insults, the mockery, the weeks of humiliation. They were all fuel. She wasn't just going to save them. She was going to show them. She was going to show all of them. She burst into the armory, startling the young private behind the cage. My M24, she panted. Now. Specialist, I need a... Now, she roared in a voice she didn't know she had. Or I will come through this cage and get it myself, your choice. The private fumbled with the keys. He handed her the heavy black case. And give me 3 boxes of match grade, she said. She ran out of the armory, her rifle case in one hand. She ran towards the sounds of the distant, popping gunfire. She knew a place, a shortcut through the base's old water treatment pipes. It would dump her out on a ridge high above the reservoir, a ridge that Doyle and his men had never bothered to map. But she had sat there last week on her trash detail, and she had ranged every single point on that lake. She knew the distance to the old cypress stump, 740 meters. She knew the distance to the boathouse, 810 meters. And she knew the distance to the spot where the drone had seen the phantom sniper, 950 meters. A long shot, an impossible shot, but she was Maya Reed, and she was done being underestimated. The run was brutal. Maya Reed moved through the suffocating North Carolina humidity not as a person, but as a machine. Her lungs burned. Her legs were on fire. The heavy rifle case slammed against her thigh with every step. She didn't feel it. All she felt was the cold, clear focus of the mission. Hicks was down. Carter was dead. The squad was trapped. She cut behind the mess hall, past the rows of quiet, empty barracks, and leapt over a chain-link fence. She landed hard in the tall, wet grass that bordered the base's perimeter. This was the dead zone, an area no one patrolled. Ahead of her was the mouth of the old stormwater drain pipe. It was 5 feet high, made of concrete, and smelled of rust and stagnant water. Without hesitation, she plunged into the darkness. Inside, it was a different world. It was cool. The only sound was the drip of water and the frantic echo of her own boots splashing through the shallow, muddy stream at the bottom. She ran. She did not need light. She had memorized this pipe. She had walked it last week, looking for a security breach for an after-action report that she knew Doyle would never read. She counted her steps. 500 paces, a sharp left turn, another 200. She could see a faint gray circle of light ahead, the end of the tunnel. She emerged, covered in mud and foul-smelling water, into a thicket of blackberry thorns. She was on the ridge, high above the chaos, high above the lake. Below her, spread out like a terrible painting, was the battle. She could hear the crack snap of gunfire echoing across the water. She saw First Squad, pinned behind the small berm, the sand around them being chewed up by incoming rounds. They were in a desperate, losing fight. And then she saw the lake. It was exactly as she had pictured, but worse. The phantoms were no longer hiding. They were advancing. They were rising from the water. They were men clad in advanced, algae-covered camouflage. They looked less like soldiers and more like swamp creatures, things from a nightmare. They were moving in a coordinated line, emerging from the deep water, their rifles held high. They were moving with a terrible, silent professionalism. They were not a militia. This was a military unit. Maya dropped to her stomach. The thorns tore at her uniform, but she felt nothing. With practiced, economical movements, she unclipped her rifle case. She opened it. The M24 was clean, dark, and beautiful. She attached the scope. She clicked the bipod legs into place. She slid a magazine loaded with 5.308 match-grade rounds into the rifle. She chambered a round. The click-clack was the most satisfying sound in the world. She put her eye to the scope. The world dissolved. All that existed was the small, clear circle of her lens. The humidity, the noise, her own burning lungs. All gone. She was cold. She was still. She scanned the battle. She saw Doyle, his helmet gone, firing his M4 wildly at the advancing phantoms. She saw Ramirez trying to drag the body of Hicks, who was not moving, back behind the berm. She saw 2 other soldiers firing, reloading, firing. Then she scanned the water. She saw the main body of the enemy. 20, maybe 30 of them wadding to shore, but she wasn't looking for them. She was looking for him. She scanned past the advancing line to the deep water, where the drone had seen him. Nothing, just gray, choppy water. Where are you, she thought. You're the leader, you're the professional, you wouldn't be in the first wave. You're. And then she saw it. It was not a man, it was a ripple, a disturbance, a log that was not a log. 950 meters out. Just as she'd ranged it. A figure rose from the water. It was not a slow, clumsy movement. It was a fluid, powerful motion. The phantom sniper. He was covered in a ghillie suit made of reeds, mud, and water lilies. He looked like a creature born from the lake itself. In his hands was the .408 rifle. It was massive. He was not looking at the shore. He was not looking at First Squad. He was scanning the ridge, her ridge. He knows, Maya thought, her heart giving a single hard thump. He's a professional. He knows this is the only overwatch position. He's hunting for me. The phantom raised his rifle. He put his eye to his own massive scope. He was looking right at her. Maya had less than a second. There was no time to calculate wind, no time to check her dope charts. She had to use what her father had taught her. Instinct, feel. The phantom was adjusting his own scope. He had found her. Breathe. She let half a breath out. Hold. The crosshairs settled, not on his head, not on his chest. At this range, with the wind coming off the lake, that was a fool's shot. She aimed for his weapon. Squeeze. She pressed the trigger. The M24 bucked against her shoulder, a hard, familiar punch. The sound of her shot, a sharp crack, was instantly lost in the larger noise of the battle. She never lost sight of the target. Through the recoil, she saw it. 950 meters away, the phantom sniper's rifle exploded. Her .308 round, traveling at 2,600 feet per second, had struck his scope, shattering the glass and metal and driving it back into his face. The figure recoiled, clutching his eye, and toppled backward, disappearing beneath the surface of the water with a splash. He was out of the fight. One down, Maya whispered. She chambered another round, click-clack. Now for the others. She turned her attention to the advancing line of phantoms in the water. They were closer, maybe 500 meters. They were wadding, exposed from the waist up. They had heard her shot. They had seen their leader fall. They were confused, looking around, searching for the new threat. Good, Maya thought, look for me. She settled the crosshairs on the man in the center, the one who looked like he was giving orders. Breathe, hold, squeeze. Crack. The shot was perfect, center mass. The man collapsed, a dark bloom spreading on the water. The phantoms panicked. Their perfect professional line broke. They no longer knew where the threat was. Was it in front of them from first squad, or was it from the hills? Hunter lead, Maya yelled, though she had no radio. It was a habit. Get your men up, fire and move, get out of the kill zone. As if he'd heard her, Doyle looked up. He had seen the leader fall. He had seen the second man drop. He looked toward the ridge. He couldn't see her, but he knew. Up, Doyle roared, his voice new, alive. On your feet, we are leaving. Ramirez, pop smoke, pop it on the water. Ramirez threw a smoke grenade. It landed in the shallow water, and a thick white cloud began to cover the shore. Crack, Maya fired again. Another phantom dropped. Crack, a fourth shot. This one was a miss, snapping past the ear of another soldier, forcing him to dive for cover. The enemy was in disarray. They were trained to fight from concealment, from the water. Exposed in the open with a sniper they couldn't see picking them off. They broke. The phantoms turned. They stopped advancing. They started to retreat, dragging their wounded, splashing back into the deep water, back toward the far shore, disappearing beneath the surface like the creatures they were. On the beach, Doyle was dragging Hicks. Ramirez was covering them. They were moving, retreating back into the woods, back to safety. Maya kept firing. She was not shooting to kill now. She was shooting to suppress. She fired at the water in front of the retreating enemy, kicking up plumes of spray, forcing them to stay down, forcing them to run. Then she heard a new sound, the whump-whump-whump of helicopters. The QRF had arrived. 2 Black Hawks roared over the ridge, flying low over the lake. Their side gunners opened up, .50 caliber rounds chewing the water, turning the phantoms' retreat into a rout. The battle was over. It had taken less than 10 minutes from the moment she fired her first shot. Maya lay still. Her heart was pounding like a drum. Her hands were shaking just slightly. The adrenaline was fatting. She took a deep, shuddering breath. The air smelled of cordite and lake water. She had done it. She had saved them. She looked through her scope one last time. The lake was empty, save for the dark, still forms of the men she had shot. First squad was gone, safe in the woods. The helicopters were circling. She was safe, and she was in more trouble than she had ever been in her life. She stood up, her legs wobbly. She methodically cleaned her rifle. She disassembled it. She placed it back in its case. She knew what was coming. She walked down from the ridge, not back through the pipe, but down the main path toward the road where the QRF vehicles were now arriving. A Humvee screeched to a halt in front of her. Colonel Peters jumped out. His face was purple with rage. Specialist Reed, he bellowed. Sir, Maya said. She stood at attention, her muddy uniform dripping. Do you have any idea what you have done? You abandoned your post. You disobeyed a direct order. You took unauthorized action. I will have your stripes. I will have you in the stockade for 20 years. Maya looked at him. She did not flinch. Yes, sir. Is first squad safe? Yes, they have casualties, but they are safe, no thanks to your little cowboy stunt. Then I'll accept the consequences, sir. A second Humvee pulled up. Sergeant Doyle climbed out. His face was covered in grime, his uniform was soaked in. Maya realized it was blood. It was Carter's blood. He walked over, his eyes locked on Maya. He stopped, right in front of her, in front of the colonel. Maya braced herself. This was it. This was the end of her career. Doyle, the man she had humiliated, the man whose squad she had saved, was going to be the one to hammer the final nail in her coffin. Doyle looked at the colonel, then he looked at Maya. He did not yell, he did not mock. He dropped to one knee, he was breathing hard, he looked broken. Sir, Doyle said, his voice a hoarse whisper, I have a correction for my after-action report. What are you talking about, Sergeant? The colonel snapped. Specialist Reed, she didn't abandon her post, Doyle said, looking up at Maya. She didn't disobey an order, she saved us, she saved me. He looked at Maya, his eyes full of a terrible, raw shame. I was blind, Reed. I was a fool. I got Carter killed. I almost got them all killed. You were right. You were right about all of it from the very beginning, the glint, the water. He stood up unsteady. He faced the colonel. Sir, Specialist Reed did not abandon her post. I did. I abandoned my duty as a leader. I put my pride before my men. I ignored good intel because I was a prejudiced, arrogant idiot. Whatever punishment is coming, sir, it's for me, not her." The colonel stared, dumbfounded. The soldiers of the QRF, a half-dozen of them, were standing there, watching. "She," Doyle said, pointing a shaking finger at Maya, "is a hero, and I recommend her for a Silver Star. Now, if you'll excuse me, sir, I have to go write letters to 2 families, one for a hero, and one for a kid I murdered." Doyle turned and walked away, a man defeated, leaving Maya and the stunned colonel alone on the side of the road. The silence that followed Sergeant Doyle's words was heavier than the humid air. Colonel Peters stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. He had come here to make an arrest, to unleash his fury on a rogue specialist. But Doyle's confession had ripped the script to pieces. The QRF soldiers were starring. The entire situation had turned upside down. Maya stood at attention. She did not feel victorious. She felt hollow. Carter was dead. Hicks was wounded. Doyle was a broken man. This was not justice. This was just loss. The colonel finally found his voice. "Sergeant Doyle," he barked. Doyle, who was halfway to a medical truck, stopped and turned, his shoulders slumped. "Get in that Humvee. You are confined to quarters until I can sort this mess out." Doyle just nodded, a man already in a prison of his own making, and did as he was told. Peters turned back to Maya. His anger was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating confusion. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. The mud, the water streaks, the calm, steady eyes that had seen so much. "Specialist," he said, his voice flat. "Go to the aid station, get cleaned up, get your report to me in 2 hours. You will report to my office, not the TOC, not the armory, mine, and you will not speak to anyone about what happened here. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Maya said. "We are far from done, Specialist, far from done." As she walked away, the soldiers parted for her. Their expressions were no longer mocking. They were not even respectful. They were awestruck. They were looking at a ghost. The aid station was chaos. Wounded soldiers, part of the QRF who had taken fire during the chase, were being treated. She saw Ramirez in the corner, sitting on a stool, his head in his hands, shaking. He looked up as she walked in. "Reed," he whispered, "It's I." Maya just nodded, walked past him to a sink, and began to wash the mud and pipe scum from her face and hands. 2 hours later, she stood in front of Colonel Peters' desk. She was clean, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform as neat as she could make it. Her written report was in her hand. "Sit," he said, not unkindly. She sat. "I've read the preliminary reports," Peters said, rubbing his temples. "I've reviewed the drone footage, what little we have. I've spoken to a very contrite Sergeant Doyle." He looked at her. "You broke at least a dozen regulations today, Specialist. You abandoned your post. You stole, in effect, government property. You disobeyed a direct order from me. You engaged an unknown enemy force alone. By all rights, you should be in a cell." "Yes, sir." "But," he continued, leaning forward, "you also single-handedly prevented the massacre of an entire squad. You confirmed the nature of an enemy threat that we didn't even know existed, and you neutralized their command structure in." He consulted a paper, "under 3 minutes, from 950 meters, with your first shot." He looked up. "That's one hell of a shot, Specialist." "It was a lucky shot, sir," Maya said. "No," Peters said, shaking his head. "Luck is what Doyle had, luck that you were on this base, that was skill. Now tell me, from the beginning, what did you see?" For the next hour, Maya talked. She did not talk about the mockery. She did not talk about the insults or cleaning the rifles or the gate duty. She just gave him the facts. She told him about the glint she saw from the tower, the spooked animals, the jammer, her conversation with Carter, her logbook which she placed on his desk. She explained her theory that the Phantoms were not random militia. They were a highly trained, well-funded paramilitary group. "They're not poachers, sir," she said. "They were testing us. They hit the cop car to get our attention. They tripped the sensor to see our response time. They set that ambush for first squad to see how we would react." "Testing us for what?" Peters asked. "For a full-scale assault, sir, or to see if the base was a soft target for something else. They had anti-materiel rounds. They had jammers. They had amphibious ghillie suits. This is beyond anything I've ever seen." Peters was pale, and Doyle, he ignored all of it. "Sergeant Doyle was operating on the information he had, sir," Maya said, choosing her words carefully. Peters scoffed. Don't cover for him, specialist. He's not. He told me everything, how he sidelined you, how he mocked you, he called himself a prejudiced fool, his words. Maya said nothing. This changes things, Peters said, standing up and packing. This isn't an internal matter anymore. This is a domestic terror-level threat. I have to call this up to FORSCOM. The FBI will be here by morning. He stopped and looked at her. Doyle's career is over, he knows it. He'll be demoted and he'll be lucky to get an honorable discharge. First squad is being broken up. As for you. He sighed, I can't give you a silver star, not for this. The victory involved too much insubordination. The brass would never sign off on it. It's a political nightmare. I don't want a medal, sir, Maya said quietly. But I can't court-martial you either, he said. You're a hero, whether I like your methods or not. You're also a problem. No one knows what to do with you. Sir, with all due respect, Maya said, I know what I am. I'm a soldier. I'm a sniper. Put me to work. This isn't over. The Phantoms we saw today, they were a recon force. The sniper I hit, the one with the .408, he's the leader, and I don't think he's dead. What? I hit his scope, sir. His rifle, I didn't hit him. I saw him fall back. They dragged him away. He's wounded maybe badly, but he's alive, and he's angry, and he knows my position now. He knows I'm here. A chill went through the room. The colonel picked up his phone. Get me the base defense plan, and get me the manifest for every ammo dump and every communications hub on this post. Now. He looked at Maya. Specialist, you are no longer benched. You are now my personal advisor. You're attached to me, you and your rifle. I want you to walk this entire perimeter. I want you to find every blind spot, every rat hole, every stormwater drain pipe on this base. I want you to think like them. Where would you hit us? I already know, sir, Maya said. Good, you start right now. The next few days were a blur. Fort Holloway was transformed. The FBI arrived, along with a quiet, spooky team from Army counterintelligence. The base was locked down tight. Maya, now working directly with Colonel Peters, was finally being listened to. She and the colonel worked side by side, poring over maps. She showed him the vulnerabilities, the old logging roads, the gaps in the sensor fences, the reservoir which everyone had seen as a barrier, but she saw as a highway. The Phantoms were identified, a shadowy group known only as Echelon. They were ex-special forces from various countries, mercenaries for the highest bidder. But what were they doing in North Carolina? The injustice was fading, replaced by a sense of urgent, cold purpose. But there was one more reckoning. She was in the range, testing a new thermal scope when a figure approached her. It was Doyle. He was in fatigues, his rank stripped from his uniform. He looked older, tired. Reed, he said. Sergeant, she replied, not turning from her scope. I wanted to say, he stammered. No, I did say it, but I wanted you to hear it from me, not from the colonel. He stood next to her. I was wrong about everything, about you, about women in the service, about what makes a good soldier. I was so busy looking at what you were, that I couldn't see who you were. He took a deep breath. You are the best soldier I have ever met. You are smarter, calmer, and a better shot than I ever was or ever will be. I hated you for it, and my hate, my stupid, pig-headed pride. It got Ben Carter killed. That's on my soul. That's my life sentence. Maya finally lowered the rifle. She looked at him. His eyes were red. Yes, it is, she said softly. It is on you and it's on me. What? No, you saved us. I could have been faster, Maya said, her own voice thick with an emotion she had not allowed herself to feel. I could have spoken up louder. I could have. I don't know. I was so busy being angry at you that I hesitated. I didn't call in the glint. I held back. Maybe if I hadn't, Carter would. She couldn't finish. Doyle stared at her. My God, Reed, you're human. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Last I checked, Sergeant. Frank, he said, Frank, I'm being transferred tomorrow. They're sending me to a desk at Fort Drum. I'll finish my 20 years counting paper clips. He offered a hand. Don't let this change you. Don't let what they did, make you hard. It's too late for that, Maya said, but she took his hand. No, he said, shaking it. It's not you're strong, but you're not hard. That's why you won. He let go, gave her a clumsy, broken salute, and walked away. Maya watched him go. It was not revenge. It was not justice. It was just sad. She turned back to her rifle. She had work to do. The Phantom was still out there, and he was coming back, she knew it. The real fight was just beginning. The week after the ambush, Fort Holloway was a different place. It was no longer a sleepy training base. It was a fortress. Concrete barriers, new sensor arrays, and nervous-looking guards were everywhere. The FBI had set up a command post, and the air crackled with a new, tense energy. The investigation into Echelon was in full swing, but the phantoms had vanished. They had melted back into the swamps and forests, leaving nothing behind but a few .408 casings and the bodies of their own men that Maya had shot. Maya was now, to her own surprise, the most valuable person on the base. She worked out of the colonel's office, her M24 case leaning against his wall. She was no longer Specialist Reed. She was Reed. She was the sniper. She was the one who had seen them. She and Colonel Peters, along with a humorless FBI agent named Sharp, spent their days trying to figure out the why. Why here? Why Fort Holloway? It makes no sense, Agent Sharp said, packing the office. This base has no strategic value, no nuclear material, no high-level intelligence. It's a National Guard post. Why risk such a high-tech, expensive operation to test a third-rate base? Maybe the base isn't the target, Maya said, her eyes fixed on the map. Maybe it's just in the way. She pointed. The reservoir, the pipes, the woods, they weren't testing our defenses, they were using our land. They were using the base as a training ground, as a rehearsal. A rehearsal for what? Peters asked. Before Maya could answer, the door opened. A young private from counterintelligence, CI, walked in holding a tablet. Sirs, ma'am, we found something in Sergeant Doyle's logs and in Specialist Carter's personal effects. What is it? Peters demanded. It's the jammer, sir, the one used in the attack. The CI private looked nervous. We analyzed the frequency, the signature, it's military grade, just like Specialist Reed said, but it's our military grade. It's a standard issue ANVLQ-12 Guardian jammer, and we found the logs. Logs for what? The motor pool, one of the jammers from a vehicle in First Squad's motor pool, was signed out 3 times in the 2 weeks before the attack. The logs are clean, but the signature on the checkout form, it's not Doyle's. Whose is it? Sharp asked. We ran the signature, sir, the private said, his voice dropping. It's a perfect match for Corporal Ben Carter. The room went cold. Carter, Colonel Peters whispered. No, that's impossible. Carter was a victim. He was killed in action. Was he, sir? Agent Sharp said, his eyes narrow. Or was he silenced? Maya felt sick. Carter, the quiet comms kid, the one she had, trusted. No, Maya said, shaking her head. It can't be. He was scared. He was scared of Doyle. Or, Sharp countered, he acted scared. He was a comms specialist. He had access. He knew the systems. He knew Doyle's prejudice. He knew Doyle would take him, the non-threatening comms kid, into the field and bench you, the one person who could stop them. It all clicked into place. The perfect static on the sensor camera, the choppy drone feed. Carter had been jamming them from the inside. He had been feeding the phantoms information, the patrol routes, the response times. He had been the one to suggest the L ambush, counting on Doyle to fall for it. But why? Peters asked. Money, Sharp said, or ideology, or both. It doesn't matter. The phantoms had an inside man, and when the operation went sideways, they cleaned up their mess, Maya finished, her voice hollow. The whiz-snap she had heard over the radio, the shot that had accidentally hit Carter. It wasn't an accident, Maya said. The phantom sniper, the one with the .408, he executed his own man. Carter had served his purpose. He had become a liability. The injustice of it all came crashing back, but in a new, horrifying way. The mockery, the insults. It wasn't just Doyle's prejudice. It had been weaponized. Carter had used Doyle's flaws to set the trap, and she, Maya, had been the target of that manipulation. So, Colonel Peters said, sitting down heavily, this was all a diversion. But for what? Maya insisted. They sacrifice a 30-man team, a top-tier sniper, and an inside asset, just to get rid of a comms kid. It doesn't add up. Wait, Agent Sharp said, looking at the CI private. You said Carter signed out the jammer 3 times. The ambush was the 3rd. The sensor tripping was the 2nd. What was the 1st? The private tapped his tablet. 3 weeks ago, sir, the day Specialist Reed arrived at Fort Holloway. Maya looked up. What else happened that day? Nothing, Peters said. It was a normal duty day. Wait. He looked at the base calendar. The convoy. What convoy? Sharp asked. A Federal Reserve transport. They move gold bullion from the depository in Kentucky to the port in Wilmington. They use Fort Holloway as an overnight stop. For security, it's a black operation. No one is supposed to know. Except, Maya said, her blood running cold. Someone with high-level comms clearance. Someone like Carter. They weren't testing us, Sharp said, his eyes wide. They were rehearsing. The ambush, the jammers, the snipers. It was a full-scale dress rehearsal for robbing the Federal Reserve. And the next shipment, Peters said, checking his classified calendar, is tonight. The base exploded into action. This was no longer a defensive operation. It was a trap. They're coming back, Maya said. They have to. They lost their inside man. They lost their element of surprise, but they're on a timetable. They're going to try. And the leader, the Phantom Sniper, he's going to come for me. Then we'll be waiting, Peters said. The gold convoy was a decoy. It was filled with 24 Delta Force operators. The real convoy was rerouted. Fort Holloway was now a baited hook. And Maya was the bait. She was not on the ridge this time. She was in a new position, a hide built into the muddy bank of the reservoir itself, not far from where First Squad had been ambushed. She was covered in mud, reeds, and water, a waterproof tarp over her. She had been there for 6 hours. She was herself a phantom. She waited. The moon rose. The lake was a sheet of black glass. And then they came. Not from the water, not from the woods. From the pipes. She saw them on her thermal scope. A line of 5 men emerging from the exact stormwater drain pipe she had used. And leading them was the Phantom Sniper. His head was bandaged. His rifle was new. He was limping, but he was here. He was not moving toward the convoy. He was not moving toward the base. He was moving toward her. He had known this was not about the gold. Not for him. This was revenge. Baseplate, Maya whispered into her small throat mic. This is Phantom Hunter. We have contact. 5 targets. They are hunting me. The decoy convoy is clear. This is a personal. Hunter, this is Baseplate. Peter's voice crackled in her ear. The Delta team is moving to support you. Do not. Negative, Baseplate, Maya said, her eye on the scope. The lead sniper had stopped. He was scanning the bank. He was looking for her. They're too far. This is my fight. The Phantom Sniper raised his hand. His team fanned out. They were hunting her. Breathe, hold, squeeze. She put the crosshairs on the man to the far left. Crack. Her suppressed rifle was barely a cough. The man dropped. The Phantom Sniper didn't flinch. He just pointed right at her. A .408 bullet slammed into the mudbank, just inches above her head, showering her with dirt. He knew where she was. I see you, she whispered. This was not a battle. This was a duel. She rolled out of her hide, firing as she moved. Crack, crack, 2 more shots, 1 hit. The other Phantom dove for cover. It was just her and him. He was behind a cypress tree. She was behind a berm. They were 800 meters apart. 2 snipers locked in a deadly game. Come on, she whispered. Come on, show yourself. For 10 minutes there was silence, just the frogs and the insects. Then she saw it, a glint, a flicker of movement. He was moving. He was trying to flank her to get a better angle. But she was Maya Reed, and this was her lake. She had ranged this spot. She knew this ground. He was moving into a trap. He rose from behind a fallen log, thinking he was clear. He wasn't. Maya had him, but she didn't aim for his head. She didn't aim for his chest. She aimed for his rifle. Crack. Her .308 round hit his .408, just as it had before. But this time it shattered the action, the metal splintering. The rifle was useless. The Phantom Sniper stood up, his weapon destroyed. He was defenseless. He looked at her across the 800 meters of water. He raised his hands. The whump-whump of the Black Hawks filled the air. The Delta team, clad in black, emerged from the woods, their weapons trained on him. It was over. The aftermath was quiet. The Echelon team was captured. The Phantom Sniper, a rogue agent from a foreign intelligence service, was handed over to Agent Sharp. He never said a word. Fort Holloway was safe. A month later, Specialist Maya Reed stood in a formation. But this was not First Squad. This was the entire base. Colonel Peters stood at the podium. Today, he said, we recognize a soldier who was tested, a soldier who was underestimated, a soldier who was mocked, and a soldier who saved us all, not with rage but with skill, not with arrogance but with observation. He looked at Maya, Specialist Maya Reed, front and center. She walked up, her heart was pounding. For extraordinary heroism, for refusing to quit, for being a soldier in the truest sense of the word. He pinned the Army Commendation Medal on her chest. It wasn't a silver star, but it was more. The base's new advanced marksmanship course, Peters said, his voice booming, is now open, and its lead instructor will be Sergeant Reed. He had promoted her on the spot. The entire base erupted in applause. Ramirez, his arm in a sling from a wound he'd gotten, was whistling the loudest. Maya looked out at the crowd. She saw the new recruits. She saw the old-timers, and she saw the faces of the men who had once poured out her coffee. They were all cheering. She had not sought revenge. She had not sought justice. She had just done her job. And in the end, that was all the justice she needed. She was not an outsider. She was not a female soldier. She was Sergeant Reed, and she was home.